Gruber is out, immigration is in, and the U.S. is far less free. We used to be the land of the free, a magnet for wired liberty junkies who wanted to get their freak on in peace. Now, because of presidential imperialism, overregulation, and economic stagnation, our freeness is eroding by the day. Businesses and people are struggling to pay for free health care. The president is acting unilaterally on anything he pleases. And now that the right is huffing that toxic power gas, they'll get in on the act and probably expand the security state to smother what's left of your freedom. The good news is you may be a lumbersexual. I'll show you all about the Grizzly Adams trend that might save your libido. Get excited. This is The Independent. Hey there, I'm Kennedy, and the president is all fired up for a sweeping edict on immigration. His Royal Highness has thus decided to ignore previous claims he's made against acting alone on behalf of certain non-Americans. Take a look at President Obama before.
The problem is that, I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the Emperor of the United States. My job is to execute laws that are passed. The easy way out is to try to yell and pretend like I can do something by violating our laws. And what I'm proposing is the harder path, which is to use our democratic processes.
Today he was singing a very different tune on his Facebook page.
What I'm going to be laying out is the things that I can do with my lawful authority as president to make the system work better.
Yes, aside from the constitutional implications, there's plenty to consider politically. Who benefits from the strangely timed presidential pen stroke? Well, let's ask these thoughtful fellows to my left. He's the devil in the details. It's Reason Magazine editor-in-chief Matt Welch. And this guy's always smiling because he knows he's the smartest one in the room and the best dressed. It's Camille Foster from Free Think Media, and together we are The Independents. And we need to add a little more sausage to our man sandwich. Look at this party panel. John Tierney is a science columnist at the New York Times. And Mike Baker, oh, he's a handsome devil as well, former CIA covert operations officer. Welcome back to the program, both of you.
Thank you.
What an exciting time to talk about things, especially the security state and the presidency. The president is going to act in prime time. He'll play the opposite game and expand criteria for deferring deportation for millions of non-Americans by taking executive action on immigration. Is this a bad idea, Mike Baker? I will go to you first.
Ooh. Well, first of all, I was hoping you were going to stick with that British accent when you opened the segment. I thought we'd all talk like that. Well, you know what? This is one of those topics, yet again, another one of those topics people can't talk about without losing their minds, right? And, you know, there's this common phrase now that people are saying, well, there's common ground here. Well, I don't think we're ever going to find that common ground because I think the two sides are coming at it from a conceptually different perspective. And I don't think that either is going to have the patience to step back and find that common ground. And I do believe that what he's about to do, if the timeline is correct, and he starts making this announcement tomorrow, is I think the reason he's doing that essentially is because he's being goaded into it probably by his political team and certainly his base, because they realize that this will then force the Republicans to do something stupid, which they're perfectly capable of doing.
They are perfectly capable of doing plenty of stupid things, especially on immigration. And this is one of the areas where they could find the common ground that Mike Baker's talking about, but they're not going to take that opportunity. Who loses on executive order?
I think Obama loses because, I mean, he's been rejected by the voters. Now to me it seems more like petulance what he's doing. Like, I still matter, I'm going to do this. And he's acting against the will of the people. I mean, these pro-immigration initiatives lost in ballots, even like in Oregon. So, I mean, he's clearly acting against the political will.
Yes, you're talking about the driver's licenses for illegals in a very liberal state.
And even people like myself, I mean, I'm a libertarian. I'd like to see more immigration. I'd like to see more people come into this country, but I don't think the president should be able to do. He's not the emperor, but now he thinks he is.
And so basically you're saying, and maybe you can touch on that a little bit more, Matt, and we kind of talked about this last night, the constitutional issues around the immigration decision, because it almost doesn't matter what he's doing. If you act outside the law, you know, at some point you're going to come up against boundaries and repercussions. What's going to happen here?
The biggest piece of this, as far as I can tell in the pre-release aspect, is that they're going to defer deportations of a class of people, the parents of kids who are here legally. thing is, he can already do that. He doesn't need an executive order. The federal government, the executive branch of the federal government, is in charge of enforcing immigration laws, just as they're in charge of enforcing, for example, federal drug laws. Yeah. They don't arrest every pot smoker in this country. They make decisions about who they're going to prosecute.
So they could essentially decriminalize illegal immigration.
They can prioritize who they're going to deport first. Every president has done this since time immemorial.
This is the route they took.
Exactly. Yeah. No one has blanketly deported people. They've all made priorities. But what Obama is doing is he wants to create a stink. He wants to throw his shoe in the punch bowl, see the splash, watch the Republicans go crazy. He's not even talking with immigration reform activists anymore. He's just like, look at me now. What are you going to do? So he could just do this by declaring priorities. Yeah. He's choosing not to. He's creating a political mess on purpose.
So, you know, there's theatrics and dramatics and all of that stuff. But what happens here? I mean, it seems like he's creating more bureaucracy where it needs to be, the process needs to be slimmed down. I mean, that's where you need congressional oversight.
Well, interestingly, I mean, some of this may perhaps take the shape of actually slimming down the bureaucracy. I think there are 2 points that are interesting. George Will, back in an article he wrote for the Post on December of 2013, talked about the size of the bureaucratic state and the number of things that are federal crimes, and the fact that this creates a space in which the executive is operating where we don't necessarily have the budget and no one can really oversee all of these programs, and the president is forced to make any number of discretionary decisions about the laws that he is going to enforce or take priority. So that sort of lends itself to Matt's point. But the second thing is we do have some of these laws on the books, like all of these high-skilled immigrant visas that are available.
Yeah, the STEM visas for people who get...
Any number of those, something like 40-odd%, actually went to immigrants. The rest are somehow being allocated to their families because of imprecisions in the law. So that is a space where the president could, in fact, do something. It could be within the bounds of the law, and he could still make it possible for some folks to come here. So some of this, we don't really know what he's going to do tomorrow yet, but some of this could be very, very good.
Yeah, there are people who want to come here. There are people who want to be here. They want to work. And for them, you should create a larger pool of visas, and that's where the system is flawed. And I don't see this executive order streamlining that at all. I don't see it creating more effectiveness where there needs to be.
Well, I think it's designed to just, as you said, to be a stink, basically. But the amazing thing to me is how badly, even at this early stage, the Republicans seem to be dealing with this. I mean, the idea that it's a parade of Republicans standing up and saying, well, if he does this, it's going to poison the well. It's going to make it awfully difficult for him to work with us over the next 2 years. Yeah. As if he cares. He could care less whether it's difficult over the next 2 years to work with them. But this is their initial thought process. That is how we're going to deal with this. I have this concern that we're marching towards dysfunction, even of a greater magnitude than we have.
I was just going to say, like, how could it possibly be worse?
What's the matter with dysfunction?
Then they can't do anything. It's almost great. All right, well, what is amnesty? The word is very divisive and elicits emotional responses from both sides. But what exactly is it? And is there a way of offering immigration reform without it? I'll ask you, John Tierney.
Boy, that is a big question. I favor letting people stay in here, and I tend to see that we need more. Obviously, there's an economic demand for these workers, and we should let them in, especially the high-skilled workers. It's such a gut reaction on people, though, in the public, that it's really hard to do it. So I mean, it's become this insoluble problem. I covered it on Capitol Hill when John McCain, almost got that thing through, during the Bush years, but they couldn't get the immigration because the Republican right wing wouldn't do it.
No, but they use that word. It's a trigger word, isn't it, Matt?
It is. It actually refers to legalizing people who came here illegally or who were expired under expired visas. And so for people like my wife, who's a legally naturalized citizen,
who went through a long process,
said so they go in the front of the line at the same time. The problem is a lack of imagination on two fronts. One is what you said. We need a lot more legal visas. When you have more than 10 million people who are illegal, you have a prohibition problem. Yes. There's something wrong with the law. We're making illegal a natural human activity. So if we expand drastically the number of legal visas and simplify that process, we won't have so many illegals, and then this becomes less of a pressing issue. And we also have a problem. We only think of immigrants in two buckets. One is tourists. The other is people who are on a pathway to citizenship. We can't imagine, really, temporary workers. There's only, a few number of those that are allowed to come in.
No, the scaremongers are telling you there are no temporary workers. There are people who want to come over in caravans with hundreds of family members and drain resources dry.
There are only this many legal spots for people like that. We can't imagine guest workers. We should imagine guest workers because that actually makes sense.
And then that way, Camille, you don't have to grant amnesty. Correct?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I do find pretty disturbing, I've noticed conservatives have started to take up the mantle of, oh my gosh, there are so many people here who are undocumented. They're being abused by the system. Well, yeah, that happens when you don't provide some mechanism by which we can actually make these people accredited citizens of the United States. They've lived here. Their children have grown up here and have gone to our schools. Yeah. We got to find a way to fix the problem.
We got to find a way to fix the problem. Even Mike Baker, I almost said
even Mike Baker. But I mean, your point I think is a really good one. I spent most of my life overseas, and I know a lot of people who went through the system properly. They worked and they worked and they worked, and their goal, their dream, get here, make a new life. And they walked, and I understand why they're so upset with this idea that suddenly, boom, everybody came in illegally, fine. But at the same time, we can't. I mean, we've got to resolve this in a way that I think addresses the border problem, because you talk about how, well, look, if we have 10 million people, obviously we have a prohibition issue. I would argue that we do in part have a border problem.
Yeah, Canada.
We've got to deal with that. But ultimately, my big concern, again, I go back to the same thing. Nobody is going to discuss this thing in a rational manner. As soon as he pulls this off tomorrow and Friday, we're done.
Yeah, no, it becomes an emotional free-for-all. It becomes a hysterical, or a pinata of hysteria. Mike Banker and John Tierney. Yes, pinata indeed. Take a whack at it. And we will with them a little later in the show. Neil Cavuto is going to have a very lovely special and great coverage of the president's immigration address. It's tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by a special live Stossel only on the Fox Business Network, always giving you the very finest. Coming up, we'll find out if liberty is dead in the Democratic caucus. And coming up later, we'll take our lumps from our human resources director. The hate mail has been piling up, so if you send in something nasty, tonight may be your night for retribution. 2 minutes hate is on the way.
Martin, you're not making my job any easier. Kennedy was wearing a panda costume on Friday. A panda costume. We do news and news analysis. And she said something about a race that I can't mention. You need to keep her in line. You need to keep Matt under your thumb. And you need to keep Camille on a tight leash, okay?